Are you struggling to find the centers to go in your poly burlap sunflowers? I'm going to show you how to make your very own boxwood center in the video right now. Okay, for this part, we're going to make the center of our flower. So what I did is, some of the things that you're going to need is some hot glue. I do use a glue pot, which is basically just an electric skillet. I use a small electric skillet. We're going to need some of this plastic canvas. I purchased this at Joann's, and it says 7 mesh on it. We're going to need some floral wire. These are 2-inch styrofoam balls and some boxwood from our store. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our wreath frame that we use, which this one, again, we used a 10-inch wreath frame. And we're going to measure out the size of our mesh. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. It's always a good idea to do this first after you've added the flower, after you've added the burlap, poly burlap. This gets a little challenging. So I just lay it on top of my mesh. I take some kind of marker and mark where to cut it. And now I have my markings on where to cut my mesh out. Once I cut it, it's going to look like this. So this is going to go in the center of our flower once we're finished. We're going to take our foam balls, and we only need half of one for this method. So I'm going to use a serrated knife, and it's literally just a kitchen serrated knife, and I'm going to cut that in half. And sometimes the sawing motion is best. And I'm going to be able to reuse that half for a future flower center. Now I'm going to take some of my floral wire, and this is a 22 gauge, but a 26 gauge will work as well. Snip that off, and I'm going to need 2 pieces. You just want to make sure that the pieces are long enough to go around the ball and the mesh. So I'm going to come up underneath and grab that there, come around the opposite side, grab it there, and guess what? Find my center, and I'm just going to secure it to the mesh, the plastic canvas. I keep saying mesh, but it's the canvas. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side so that it doesn't shift around. One of these wires is not enough because it will shift. So I'm going to do one the opposite direction. So I'm making that crisscross on the back side. I'm doing it this way so that this edge is smooth. I don't want these knots on the back of my flower center. And there we go. Get it lined up and secure it. I'm just securing it so that the foam doesn't come loose from my canvas. Push those down. Now we have a base that we can add our boxwood to. So this particular boxwood that I'm using has like smaller clusters. So I'm going to take and snip that off. So I have a little bit of a stem to work with. And I'm going to take my glue. I'm going to dip that stem in the hot glue. And I'm going to start adding some boxwood to my flower center. So you don't want the stem that you're leaving left over to be too long, because you don't want it to come out on the opposite side. So I even made this one a little bit shorter. And I'm going to stagger this down. I'm going to go around, cut off another piece, and I can either leave that there or I can snip that off. It doesn't really matter. And I'm just kind of following the wire around for the first layer. So let's cut several of these to have ready. That one doesn't have. This one actually slides up, so I can bring that up to a certain point. All right, we've got enough to work with for right now. Going back to my glue. And again, kind of following that wire. I'm going to start this one at the bottom so I'm not having to move the other ones out of my way. So we followed that wire along this way. We're going to do the same thing in the opposite direction. And we'll start along the wire here. And do the opposite side. I'm putting approximately a 1/4 inch in between each boxwood stem. So you can see how full that is already. So we're only going to need probably maybe 2 more of these. And I'm just going to fill in the gaps where we have holes from where we put our original set. Glue consistency should be about like honey. If you get it too thin, it will string extremely heavily. So consistency, finding that right little special touch of your glue pot. If you get it too hot, it gets really thin and it starts stringing a lot more. It's still going to string no matter what. We've got gap over here. And one over here. A nice full center. I'm going to go ahead and put one more here just because it looks a little lame. And there we go. So that will become our center for our flower.